In hard and industrial techno, we all love fountain kick drums that hit like a hammer, but let's not forget other percussion sounds that create rhythm and an atmosphere even a good kick drum can't create. Good examples of what I'm saying are the tracks Ignite or DLLR55 by iArcana and Inside Reactor by Wanderlust. In this quite long tutorial I will show you 4 powerful techniques that will make your generic hi-hat sound original, and if you are looking for more hard/industrial techno sounds, check out my hard techno reinforcement, sample and serum preset pack. Inspired mainly by artists like KRTM, Raxile or iArcana, it has everything you need to level up your productions. An original hard or industrial techno percussion needs right hi-hat samples. To keep them inside of a single channel, which I believe makes the project more organized but also helps arranging more groovy rhythms, I will use a drum rack instrument. Don't be afraid of samples that have lots of mid-frequencies and are far away from a typical 808 or 909 hi-hat. Samples like this one will be much easier to manipulate and distort later, and various sound manipulation is the key for distinct hi-hat sound. I took 2 extra hi-hats that are similar to the first one. And remaining 3 samples are going to be different to make the percussion even more interesting. The 4th hi-hat will be much brighter and noisier. The 5th hi-hat can be a bit metallic. And the last sample will be quirky in its own way. 6 samples in total are a lot for our purpose. If you want to keep things simpler, you can use just 3 or 4 different samples. Once you found the samples you like, create a MIDI clip where we will sequence a rhythm. The pattern I have in this clip is 2 beats long, but again, if you want to keep it simple, 1 beat long percussion pattern is also fine and very common. I'll start sequencing the pattern with the hi-hat I think is the most interesting among all 6 samples. Then, I fill additional gaps with remaining samples. Apart from the placement of each note in this MIDI clip, I can also manipulate the velocity of it. In other words, by using the bottom section and highlighting a MIDI note, I can control its volume. This can make the same hi-hat sample be played with different volume over time, which translates to more rhythmic percussion. Because I picked a few more samples than the bare minimum requires, I can play around and stuff them in between the samples I do already have sequenced. But I think I want the pattern to be simpler, so I will use the extra samples for layering instead. Layering is a simple trick that relies on playing a few samples on top of each other to make the resulting sound fuller and richer. It's time to turn on the grey MIDI notes to show you in practice what does layering do to your percussion. All 6 samples can be individually manipulated further, but I think it makes more sense to shape the whole percussion group with the effects at first. In that way we can create a full and atmospheric sound quicker, and later, if necessary, we will return to individual samples for detailed fine-tuning. As of now, the main issue I have with these hi-hats is that they don't take enough space in the mix. They also sound very dry. If I play them as they are now with the kick drum, you can hear the hi-hats don't sound like in all these finished hard techno tracks. Let's learn the first technique that will make it happen, the group compression. Right now, if I use an oscilloscope to look at the hi-hat pattern, I will see lots of spikes in the waveform. These spikes are the transients of hi-hat samples that are later followed by the, let's say, tail. The volume difference between the transients and tail is quite large, so when we play the hi-hats along with the kick drum, it will be mainly the transients that we will hear. Compressing the percussion group in a right way is going to reduce the difference between the loud and quiet parts, making the hi-hats more hearable in a beat. The effect I will use for group compression is the Soundtoys Devil Lock Deluxe limiter, but before I explain how it works, let me advertise my myself quickly and just say that if you wish to have other sound design or music production subjects explained in such an easy and practical way, consider going onto my website to learn more about my private music production lessons. Free consultations are available as well. The Devil Lock Deluxe is a simple to use and powerful compressor that can both reduce the dynamic range of the hi-hats and distort them, making them crushed and noisy. All the magic is enclosed in these two knobs. If the amount of that glue added is not enough, or if you want that gluing to sound more unnatural, use the release switch to change the release time of the limiter to fast. The second control, the crunch, is what distorts the hi-hats, making them noisier. The darkness knob is a simple low-pass filter that can make the hi-hats sound more muffled or darker. At last, the mix knob blends the processed signal with the unprocessed one. I am interested in gluing the whole hi-hats group, so it makes sense to leave it at 100% and to control the amount of gluing with only crush and crunch. It's easy to overdo things with the Devil Lock. So don't be surprised when I say that in the end I turned all these knobs by tiny bit. This limiter is paired with an utility that compensates the volume difference between compressed and non-compressed hi-hats. I will play now the percussion and A-B that group to show you how reducing the dynamic range helps making the hi-hats sound fuller in the mix. This is how I make the hi-hats take more space in the beat, but such a group compressor will not add any extra background or character to the hi-hats, so let's try processing the same dry hi-hats in a different way. It's time for a second technique, that is using a reverb. Because I want to use both of these techniques on my hi-hats at the same time, I need to make use of parallel processing. By using Audio Effect Track, I split the same dry hi-hat signal to two different processing chains. One of them will have the Devil Lock limiter that flattens the hi-hats, and the second one will have the reverb that adds an extra background to the sound. On the reverb chain, I will use the hybrid reverb effect. It blends two types of reverbs. The first one is the convolution reverb. Such reverb can sound very interesting. But I think that to my hi-hats an algorithmical type of reverb, so just a typical reverb, will suit better. It will suit better because this kind of reverb will be usually longer and brighter, and in industrial techno we would appreciate noisy hi-hats. The first choice you can make to set the reverb is to pick one out of 5 different reverb algorithms. I purposefully stopped by the shimmer one as it has a cool pitch knob that can transpose the reverb itself up or down in a quite natural way. To set up the reverb, I will need some context, so I will play my already compressed hi-hats with reduced volume to make you hear all the reverb adjustments easier. So, the very first adjustment I will do is to, of course, set the dry wet to 100%, because the dry hi-hats are already in the dry chain. I will also turn off the internal equalizer, as I will equalize the reverb with a separate equalizer later. I am going to use now another effect to add another type of background to the hi-hats, because I think this effect is going to work better when applied to the reverb signal. And that's because the reverb sounds smoother than our compressed hi-hats. I will make use of parallel processing once again. This time though, the audio effect track will be added after the reverb. So, after setting it up, the dry chain will have the reverb output alone, but the corpus chain will have the corpus effect added. It's an effect that simulates various resonances. This resonance is going to sound different than the reverb, so let's see how this effect works. The first choice, besides again turning up the dry wet to 100%, would be to pick an object that will be the source of our resonance. I know from experience that the pipe resonance is going to sound most aggressive, but I have to change the pitch of that resonance first with the tune knob. Similarly, as in the reverb plugins, I can control the decay time or just the lengths of the extra sound added. Thankfully, the pipe resonance type doesn't have lots of parameters that adjust it, so we can go through fine-tuning the corpus effect quickly. Alright, after adjusting the volume of the corpus wet signal once again, it's time for more group processing. This time, the group processing will be placed after all parallel processing chains we created so far. So the effects I will use now will process both compressed hi-hats, the reverb and the corpus output. At first, I want to add more crunch to the whole sound. A perfect solution will be the Redux Beat Crusher. It can downgrade the hi-hats in two different ways. The first one is the downsampling that gives the sound a lo-fi effect. Another way to distort the sound is to reduce the bit depth that gradually adds more and more noise. If the Redux destroys the sound too much, we can blend it better with the dry wet fader. Redux is one of the few distortion effects that doesn't destroy much the dynamics of the sound, so that's why I recommend using this for hi-hats destruction. If I used something different like pedal for example, you could hear that the hi-hats after using pedal are flat and don't have any rhythm anymore. So let's try yet another distortion effect that doesn't have to kill the dynamics. I'm talking here about the overdrive that reminds just a bit a guitar pedal. This overdrive effect through a bandpass filter selects a frequency range that is later emphasized through distortion. The filter is controlled by both center frequency and filter bandwidth controls. We will use these to emphasize some higher mids of the hi-hats, so the frequency range from around 1K to 3 kHz. The amount of distortion is dialed with the drive, and the brightness of the sound after distortion is set with the tone. Now onto the dynamics. Depending on the settings of the dynamics fader, I can make the hi-hats either more dynamic or flatter. The overdrive is very aggressive and our hi-hats need just a bit of such enhancement. Because of that, the dry wet knob should be set to something below 10%, which is a very common setting. After all that processing, if I play the hi-hats channel along with the kick drum, now we notice that with all these techniques and tricks, hi-hats feel much more spaced than before. But what about the rhythm? While using an audible sidechain compression on hi-hats is more appropriate for trance techno, we can add a pumping effect on these hi-hats too. For that I can use an automated volume modulation, bring both utility and shaper from the modulators category. Shaper is an adjustable LFO that allows you to draw your own modulation curves. At first, we have to use the map button to assign that modulation to some destination. For a sidechain compression effect, I will use the gain knob in the utility. Next to the map button, we have two values that set the modulation range of, in that case, volume. As a starting point, let's set the first value to 25%. It will mean that whenever the modulation curve is at its lowest, the hi-hats will be attenuated by 70.5 decibels. The second value will be set to 50%, so when the modulation curve is at its highest, no change in volume occurs. Now it's only a matter of drawing an appropriate curve that will give me the bumping effect on the hi-hats. In the end, the volume automation looks like this. I wanted the pumping to be less noticeable, so I increased the first modulation range value from 25 to 36%. Let's adjust the channel volume to make it fit the kick drum better. And make use of some equalization. It's important as our hi-hats after distortion and add-in resonating effects like corpus are going to have lots of unpleasant frequencies to remove. At first, the easiest thing is using both low and high pass filters. The whole hi-hats channel isn't the only sound we can equalize. For more precise control and better results, I can equalize separately, for example, the reverb signal alone, that is the output of the hybrid reverb. A corpus output will get its own equalizer as well. The same goes for the dry hi-hats after Devil Lock limiter. In the end, I left individual hi-hat samples processing because I'd like to show you another trick for making your hi-hats sound more original. If we think about the hi-hats equalization we did earlier, one of our goals was to remove any resonating higher frequencies that made the hi-hats sound annoying. After equalization, our hi-hats sound clean, but they lost some of the character that had earlier. Let's do something counterintuitive now and actually add some resonances back. The difference is that now when I add the resonances, I will add them to single hi-hat sounds, which is less obtrusive than having the same resonance be notable in the whole hi-hats channel. For example, in the hi-hats group equalization, we had a 7th filter that cut the 3 kHz area. With another EQ, I will now boost the same frequency area but only on the first hi-hat sample. A few other hi-hats will get their own low-pass filters with quite large resonance. This will not only make the hi-hats sound darker, but it will also add more character to them. Notice that some of the filters are of a different type and they come with an extra drive knob. As a result of using that, I do not only make some of the hi-hats even louder, but I also can saturate them slightly, giving them an even fuller sound.